Hello, welcome to Time to Say Goodbye. It is the 11th of November. We're doing this live. This is the second time we're doing it, and it's been an interesting experiment, and we're going to keep it going. Ideally, I think that we're going to have guests on who are also, I don't want to even use this phrase, but native to the Substack platform. And like that'll be a good way for us to interact with other people who are on this platform, which is something that honestly, since we started this podcast about 5 years ago, we've used it and it's been extremely helpful. But I think at that time, podcasts were in a little bit of a different place where it was mostly people just find it through Twitter, or they would mostly find it through
Yeah.
Apple Podcasts, right? Like, I mean, how did I don't do you listen to podcasts, Tyler? Like, what do you listen to? You listen like
I just
fishing
listen to like
podcasts or something?
football podcasts and a fishing podcast. Yeah.
So how did you find those like in the past? Like what was your way of finding them? Was it just people, were they all like Jalen Hurts' awesome podcast or something?
No, I mostly just listen to like the Ringer universe of football podcasts, and then the Athletic one I used to listen to, and then the fishing podcast my buddy runs. So I mean that was easy. But yeah, I don't really.
What's the athletic podcast that you listen to?
I think it's just called the Athletic Football.
Oh,
Yeah. I haven't
yeah.
listened to it in like a year. I used to listen to it all the time. It's very good. It's solid. Yeah.
I know the Athletic does a lot of soccer podcasts that I listen to, and it's because they made a big investment. The Times did in covering soccer when they started the
Oh.
Athletic, and they hired a bunch of people, like a bunch of British writers, including like Rory Smith, who was one of the more esteemed writers, who I actually think is quite good. And they produce a whole bunch of podcasts, and it's interesting because like I think that they're like so informative, but they're also like quite sterile, you know?
That's how the Athletic football
Right,
podcast is. Yeah,
right.
yeah. It's very
And it's
clinical.
it's almost like too professional or something like that. Like
Yeah.
the audio is good, you know?
It's not janky enough.
Yeah. And I thought that because it was all British journalists that they would just come in with like flaming hot takes.
Yeah, yeah, like soccer hooligans,
Right, that they would just make shit up because that's like what
Yeah,
people do. Like that's the entirety of British journalism is basically making shit up. And then the thing that they make the most shit up is about soccer transfers, right? Do you know
yeah.
anything about this? All right.
No,
So
no,
like
no, no.
basically like it is normal practice to say like this player who you've never spoken about or never thought about really is definitely going to move to this other club for like £150 million fee or something like that, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And you just like put it out there and there's no there's no repercussions to it at all. And so like basically there's just this, if you follow soccer Twitter or something like that,
yeah.
there's this never ending stream of fake rumors that come out.
Out of England.
Yeah, yeah, and also parts of Europe, but mostly out of England. And so my general thought that was that like, oh well, the British soccer journalists are just wild, you know, and
And they're just boring as shit. They
yeah,
put them on.
but the thing that the Athletic did to their credit is they got all the reputable ones, right? Like the ones
Yeah.
who don't
Oh,
just
sure.
lie.
Yeah.
And
That was
as
the
a
mistake.
result, they have a very informative and I think very smart set of podcasts that do feel a little bit sterile sometimes. So yeah, I don't mean to criticize you, Athletic, but I feel like they know that too. You know, I
Yeah,
think
yeah. That's the vibe for sure.
yeah, their football one is like that too. Like that's a little. I mean, I think I would
A little
understand
less
that
so, but
criticism.
like the Ringer is definitely lets it hang out a little more for sure. Yeah, the
Yeah,
Athletic's pretty butt down.
yeah. It's like a difference between like a warm, hey, let's all be together and talk about this stuff, and then the other side of it is like, oh well, let's I'm going to tell you about stuff,
Yeah.
right? And so part of the reason why we're doing this on live, I think, is it's like actually a decent way to record our podcast. It's not
It's
the
all
way that
about the effort ratio.
yeah, the way that we actually record the podcast is not that different from here, from what we're doing right now. But yeah, I don't know. We might as well try it a few more weeks, and then I think that we'll have people like that we know, like Max Reed or John Gans, or people that we know who are on Substack to come on from time to time, and then you get this like nice crossover thing. It's kind of like the sitcoms where one person comes from another podcast and then you all do it together or something like that. So that's the idea behind it. But you wanted to talk about something. From time to time, Tyler will send me these photos of Democratic politicians holding guns. And it's like Tyler texts me three things. The first is like whatever Marjorie Taylor Greene said that day. He sends me that approvingly, and then he sends me photos of Democrats holding guns. And so You sent me one this week, and you said you wanted to talk about it. So, like, describe the photo you sent up to me, or the video that you sent to me. I'm like,
It's a photo. So Tim Walz, and like I will preface this by saying that I think we are like disposed to Tim Walz on this podcast. Like I'm not like an anti-Tim Walz guy, but he posts about going deer hunting in Minnesota. He posts two photos. Only one of these photos is relevant. He's standing with who I think is his wife. They're both holding shotguns. Now this is a problem for a number of reasons. You can hunt deer using shotguns, right? Like it's this big post about ready to go deer hunting in Minnesota. But the shotgun he has, and I won't bore people with technical details, but it's like set up for duck or bird hunting. It is not set up like you need a different kind of barrel and a different kind of sighting system, et cetera, to use the kind of ammunition you would need to hunt deer with a shotgun in the way that he allegedly is doing. So he's using a bird gun. And so there are two possibilities there, basically. One, it's like a staged photo op, or two, he's just gonna like maim some poor deer, both of which are like bad. And I like my thing about it is like, if this sounds granular and technical, like this would be the equivalent of like confusing a wiffle ball with a baseball. You know, like anybody who is like even the most bare bones literate with like hunting or guns. Like I go to Pennsylvania in any given neighborhood and find like 6 10-year-olds who would look at that photo and be like, that's not right. You know, like, so it's just like an example. I don't understand why Democrats keep trying to do the whole gun thing, like whether it's Harris with her Glock or Gavin Newsom getting a pistol on the Sean Ryan show or this. It's like you don't have, if that's not who you are, just don't do it. It's so much worse to do it in this pandering way and get everything completely wrong, and then you just look like you are like obviously pandering to like, and that you can't even put enough effort in to like show that you care. You know, he's clearly trying to connect with like rural men, and you know, and just like either put in some effort or don't do it. You don't have to be Mr. Hunter, you know. But I don't know, dude, it just like drives me nuts. I mean, there's like a constant string of this coming from the
what's your
Democratic
theory
Party.
of it, though? Like, what's your theory as the resident gun guy on
Like,
the
why is he doing
podcast?
this?
Yeah, like, what's your theory about why this is keeps happening? Because this is the second time that you've complained about a Tim Walz gun. I think both of them you were right, because I like the second one I went back and I fact checked you because
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was like, well, I don't know, like maybe Ty's being like he's like being one of those people who watches a historical movie and then starts complaining about little things. But it did seem like you were right that there was like
I
something.
have like a limited amount of expertise in a few topics, and this is
Wait,
like
so
one of the
what's your
four.
theory? Like outside of, like whatever, he's trying to do things. Like, why is this going wrong? Because it seems kind of easy to not go wrong, right? Like it
I think,
seems like
yeah,
it is embarrassing because it's just like, well, that doesn't seem that hard to like. Even I know that
yeah, yeah,
that you shoot deer with a slug instead of
exactly.
right.
Yes,
And I've
yeah, yeah,
never
yeah.
been deer hunting in my life. I think I told you in college, we had a collection of shotguns in our house in Maine, and we tried to shoot ducks and never once hit a duck. And so then
They're
instead,
fast.
yeah, what we would do is we would drive around campus and we would find televisions that were thrown out, like so people out of people's
Yeah,
dorms,
yeah.
like like
That sounds great.
you're too young for this, but like when we went to college, everyone had like a combination VCR TV,
Yeah, yeah.
and we would take like they would break all the time, and so people would always throw them out in the dumpsters. So we would collect these things and we put them in the backyard and just shoot them.
That sounds awesome.
No, it was pretty cool.
That sounds, yeah.
Like it's a vacuum tube,
Right, right.
and so it just explodes. But yeah, that was my experience with guns. But even just from that, I know that deer you can't really you have to shoot with like a
The slug. Yeah, you're totally right. You need a different kind of barrel, and it's like, but this is like basic information. And in terms of why, I mean, I don't know. I think they've zoomed in on guns as something where it's like kind of easy. Well, like it solves two problems for them. One, it like is an easy thing to moderate on, where they can just like signal like, oh, like I'm not one of the like crazy wokes, And then I also think on top of that, it's like appeals to like a certain kind of like both man and rural voter that they're losing, I guess is what I'm thinking. But like
yeah.
it's not that they're pandering. Like all politicians pander. It's the like zero level of effort that's being put in that I find really confusing. And I mean, it just like raises all sorts of questions for me. Like, does Tim Walz hunt at all? Like, this is the kind of thing that it's the like it's such a basic like 101 kind of thing that makes me believe it's all just kind of nonsense. And that just makes it so much worse. Like that post was filled with people being like, that's not the right gun for what you're doing, And so like, yeah, I don't know, man. It's bizarre. I wish they would stop doing it. Like I don't need to vote. Like, I don't need my politician to like do all the things I like. It's like, it's fine. Just be a Minnesota beer drinking dad. Like, that's an okay thing to be.
What if yeah, I mean, I think our end conclusion on Walsh was that he was a good guy, that we
Hmm.
but that he had a lot of things in his past that didn't quite add up.
Yeah,
We didn't know which things were wrong and
Tiananmen
which ones were
Square.
right, but that there was just a lot, there's
Yeah,
just a
yeah,
lot. It's just like, all right. If nothing else, it seems like when asked questions, you seem to forget a lot of things and you forget on the side that makes you look better,
yeah, yeah.
and that some of these lies, not lies, but some of these
Oddities.
visions that you have are weird.
Yeah,
Like saying that you were in Hong Kong during Tiananmen Square when you weren't is weird. Like you would remember it. There are huge protests in Hong Kong during June of 1992, and how could you not remember that? And so I I don't know. I think that there is this like weirdness to him that I never have been able to quite shake, and it's not
yeah,
enough to. It's like I don't know. I guess like in this podcast, sometimes I like realize that I have this entire like there's just this other layer of my brain that is just much more skeptical about this type of stuff, and then there's another part of the brain where you're just like, okay, I have to accept some of these things as facts, or else I'm just going to be this guy ranting. I'm going to start believing
yeah.
all these conspiracy theories and stuff. Isn't that like it's like the moon landing and stuff, right? Like we're just like,
Which is right. Like, we are right about the moon landing.
wait, are you also? I didn't know that you were
There's
also.
no fucking wind.
I know.
Uh,
I sometimes I think I'm doing a bit about the moon landing, but then sometimes I just think about it a little more, and I'm like, I
like,
don't know.
I don't know.
Why
Yeah,
haven't we gone back?
dude, I know. Like we, how have we not gone back in like 50 years? I don't
I
know.
do think that if we faked it, that other countries would expose it by now. That's like
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
the main argument.
yeah,
But outside of that, when you get in those little spaces where they're like this, and this is wrong, and you're like, you're correct, and they're like, there's no way that these could all be right together, and you're like, you're
yeah,
also
yeah,
correct about that. So
yeah, yeah.
anyway, all right. So we wanted to talk about the shutdown today more than anything, and for those of you who have not been paying attention, which I actually don't think is that uncommon at this point because the shutdown has been going on so long, and maybe you just
Yeah.
saw the outcry of people getting mad on social media. But if you are not on social media, then you didn't see any of that, and that unless you're checking the front page of the New York Times from time to time, you're just gonna missed it, right? But basically, the shutdown has ended, but has ended in great controversy, and the controversy to me in itself is interesting because it seems like everybody is willing to accept one version of a story, and it's a version of a story that I'm not exactly like. It makes sense to me if I had to bet on it. I think this is probably what happened, but we don't really know, right? And so like that would be like that the Democrats all decided collectively that they were not going, and this is the version that I think most people think, right? Which is that they all got in some room and some of them said, let's keep going. It's 40 days. We can really hurt Trump. Let's go to at least to Thanksgiving. And that some people are like, no, we have to stop. Too much pain. We're going to start causing ourselves damage, and we've already done enough damage to Trump. His like approval rating is really, really low. We've harmed him in a lot of ways. We just won this election. We got through it. So why don't we just end it now? And then they had a talk where they're just like, well, we're all going to look terrible and everyone's going to get mad at us. And then they went like this. We can do this online, right? They played the
Yeah,
nose game where they like
yeah,
threw
yeah,
straws,
yeah, yeah.
something like that. And then a whole bunch of people got straws and they're like, dude, I have an election coming up in like 8
Yeah,
months
yeah.
here. Like, I can't be the guy who takes it. And then they're like, okay. New plan. Everybody who is either retiring or is not up for election for the next 4 years,
You're gonna
keep
take
drawing
this bullet.
straws. Right.
100%.
Right. And so that ended up being like, I don't know what is going on with New England, but it was like two people from New Hampshire, right? It was Angus King from Maine, right? Who was a politician during when I was in
Who, by the
college.
way, screwed his boy who's running for governor. Like, people are so mad about them caving on the shutdown.
Oh,
His
really?
son, yeah, his son's running for governor next year. So like, people are gonna take that shit out on the kid. But
Oh, really?
yeah, for sure.
The King legacy in Maine is ruined.
Tarnished.
I think he went to Bowdoin. Maybe he didn't, but he was always around
Uh,
Bowdoin. And like I remember when he was like talked about as the great like kind of centrist,
Mhm.
rational man when
Yeah.
I was there. I might be really
No, people I
sentimental
think
on him.
used to like him. I think people still. I mean, people like him a lot more than Susan Collins, obviously. If you're on the
Right.
liberal side of the aisle, but yeah,
Right,
I don't know.
right. So
But
it
yeah,
was, and then it was Fetterman who like basically wants to quit.
he volunteered, I'm sure.
Yeah, he's just like, I don't even care about this shutdown. I get to stay home, but just put me in. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, put me in, coach.
Yeah,
I was made for
exactly.
this moment.
Exactly. He's like, you mean I'll lose the next election? Then absolutely put me in
Sweet.
because I don't want to do this shit anymore. Um, and then it was Tim Kaine who I had forgot existed, right?
Uh,
Do you remember, like, I don't know how old are you, but but do you remember Tim Kaine's like vice presidential run at all?
yeah, with Hillary.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was like he's like, here's this like kind of floppy haired white guy who speaks Spanish.
yeah. I forgot about the
Amazing.
Spanish.
That's basically it. And so he would just speak Spanish, and we're like, I like, who is this for? It's like,
Uh,
oh, and we
this
just
is
kept,
why the Democrats have lost the Latino vote. It's all 2016. Tim Kaine was speaking
I
Spanish,
know.
and man, yeah,
It,
it pushed them
it
right.
was Latinx, and it was Tim Kaine. Tim Kaine stilted Spanish, and that's why all the Latino voters went over. But yeah, so we had so that's the story, right? Like, what do you think? But the thing that we don't know is whether or not that story is true. And the reason why we don't know that story is true is because a whole bunch of people came out and very like with the varying degrees of force
Yeah.
said, I voted no on ending the lockdown in the way that it was reported in the papers was very interesting to me because like they would use terms like, hey, like like a splinter group of Democrats went out and and then they decided on their own. But
Yeah.
then within the story there'd be like a big wink. you know? And what it made me think was that the DC Beltway politicians are being told a different story than the official story, but it's
Hmm.
all being told kind of off the record or whatever.
Yeah.
And that the certainty with which some people who I think are more in the know are basically reacting to this, which was the Democrats caved and not like set 6 or 7 or 8 Democrats like went crazy,
Yeah.
makes me think that probably the former story is true. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think, it just, I don't know. It seemed like pretty strategic to me. Like, I think basically drawing straws, like, it's clear that they wheeled out some people who are not up for reelection for many years or who are retiring to just like take this bullet because the message had come from on high that they're going to reopen the government, right? And like, I don't know. I just like I think the like vaguely conspiratorial read, which to me is just like the common sense read here, right? Like that obviously this, there was a decision that was made and that, they picked some easy fall guys to take the hit for it. That seems like obviously what went down. I mean, I don't think anyone believes that Chuck Schumer, for example, was like a hard no on reopening. But
Right,
yeah,
and that
I don't
he
know.
like he was like pleading with them to not do it, and he couldn't keep the caucus together.
Yeah,
And the thing is, Chuck Schumer isn't even really telling that story.
yeah.
Like he's just basically said, "I said no," and that
Mhm.
was the end of his statement. Now I don't know, maybe in the last day he's changed his tune a bit, but in the first day when all this came out, like that was the only statement that he made, and you would think
Yeah,
that he would be a little bit more um upfront about it than just being like, "Well, I personally said." It was like nobody cares what you said. Like you're
right.
the
Yeah,
leader of the Democrats. Like, how did
yeah,
you let this happen? And either way, it's kind of bad for the Democrats because it either means that they're like the coalition is splintering
yep.
at a time when it shouldn't, or more realistically, that they're kind of being cowardly about this and that they're like trying to sell the public a story that the public isn't really believing. And that's the part that I found interesting. Like, do you know anyone who like buys the official story?
No, no, like, and genuinely no, like, not at all. No. I mean, I was in the airport earlier today. In fairness, I couldn't figure out in which direction this guy was mad at the Democrats. But anyway, I was in the TSA line. Two things were noteworthy. One, they like brought my backpack back out because I had a water bottle at the bottom of my backpack that I forgot was filled with water, and I had flown with that on the way there. And I was like, "Oh, thank you. I'll dump this out." But I was like, I didn't. I actually had this on the way there and got through security. And the guy was like, "Oh yeah, everything's getting through security right now." And I was like, "Oh, good. That's like, excellent." But anyway, there was a TSA guy who was like melting down about the Democrats. He's like, I'm never voting for another fucking Democrat in my life. And I was like, I couldn't tell
Really?
if he, yeah, well, I couldn't tell if he was mad that they caved or like blamed
He's a
them for.
federal employee.
I know, like I didn't understand, like I said, which direction he was mad in, but he was like real angry, and then his like fellow TSA officials were trying to lower the temperature a little bit. But anyway, no, I don't know any regular people who like everyone just thinks obviously they caved, right? Like when also their alternative would be them having a spine. When was the last time they had a spine? Like the most they're willing to do is like Cory Booker rant on the House floor or the Senate
Well, they
floor
did shut
for
the
20
government down for
hours.
40 days, to be fair. Yeah.
No, that's fair. That's true. But yeah, no, I don't know anyone who believes the the official narrative. I think people
Yeah,
clearly
one
think
of
it
the
was.
people in the chat are saying the thing that I wanted to transition to. So I'll say, like, this idea was that all that was for nothing, right? And
Yeah,
I think that's a compelling argument to make. And I'm not actually even sure how I feel about it, but I would say that I understand the people who feel that way because I think that there is a version of this where you say, all right, well, they tried to do something and they could have had a certain result, and that result was the extension of the ACA, right? That's
yep,
the thing that they put at the center of it. And if you don't get that, right, then you've lost,
yep,
right? And that all your moral victories or whatever look silly because you said, this is our one demand. And then you're like, well, okay, fine. You don't have to give us a demand. We'll just cave to you. Right. And that looks bad, I think. Right. But
yep,
there's some alternative versions about this that are going around that I think have convinced me a little bit, but not really, but have at least made me think a little bit, right? And the main one is just that thing that I said at the start, which is that there is a lot of damage that was already inflicted, and that blame doesn't always run one way forever, right?
sure,
And what you have is you have a sclerotic a party that's quite bad at staying together, right? Who always want to fight with one another, and how long can you keep this unity together is a real question. 40 days is like an amazing amount of time. That's longer than I ever thought that they would be able to hold together on anything.
yeah,
Um, and that were there cracks appearing that were going to be unsustainable, right? Were people actually, other than like Dick Durbin, who's like, I'm retiring in 2 years anyway, I'm going to hang out on a boat. Um, do you
Dick
like
Durbin, big boat guy.
yeah, do you meet the press? Like all, or I'm gonna be a panelist on Bill Maher, whatever he's gonna do, right, with the rest of his life. Um, were they just sort of saying, okay, that's enough, and we're gonna just move on, and like we can't hold this together any longer, and so we just have to do something, right? Like, now that doesn't mean that Democrats look great in any of that, but it just means that maybe there are extenuating factors that made it so that they couldn't keep going. Um, and then the second argument is one I think you wanted to talk about, which is something that like Tim Miller of the Bulwark had
Yeah,
said. So yeah, why don't you present that?
yeah. So like Tim's argument was the one that I did not agree with, but I thought it was like a reasonable like adult case that was not, asking us to believe obvious untruths. So I'll just like paraphrase the tweet. He basically argues that the Dems won the shutdown fight for a few reasons. He said, he doesn't think the fold is going to matter for the midterms, which I wonder what you thought about. But he also said, this isn't an example of Dems not fighting because this was the longest shutdown in history. It was even longer than the sort of kamikaze Tea Party, style shutdowns. And so that like it is the longest one in history. You can't say that they didn't like go to the mat for this, and also like the people who are angry are a small set of people like you and I who treat, as he puts it, politics like sports. And, like regular people aren't going to care that much. There was no path to getting the Obamacare stuff back. And, I mean, that's basically Tim's case. But I mean, I don't know. What do you like? I see the point he's making. Like, I understand, like, it's not unreasonable to say, like, look, they did shut down the government for the longest time in history. Like, they did fight, I mean, I'm less persuaded by the idea that they won. It feels very clear to me they didn't. But like, do you agree with him that this doesn't matter for the midterms and that like regular people don't care that they caved?
Uh, well, no, I don't think that it's true that nobody cares that they caved, right?
Mhm.
I think that people do care that they caved, and more people than Tim is giving credit for who follow politics care that they caved
Yeah,
because they see it and they see it as part of a pattern of behavior. Now, none of these people who care about this are going to vote Republican, like literally zero, because these are people who
right.
are hardcore liberals who are um, believe that we're falling into fascism, and they have a pretty good argument at this point, right? Um, And so, but they are going to be the people who decide in a few months here in the next, even maybe few weeks, that they're going to primary all these people, you
Yep.
know? And it's not just the people who are not primariable because they drew the straw of being like, I don't have to deal with this for a long time. It's going to be anybody who really wasn't vociferously opposing the end of the shutdown, right?
Yep.
And I think the other thing that matters, and this is something that he talked about, which is like there's no path to getting the Obamacare subsidies back because the GOP controls everything and is never going to do it. And their fake populist Dems should run against them on that topic. And they have a great case study now. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, your girl, helps with that, right? Um, yeah, but didn't like the problem is that they ruined some of their credibility on healthcare.
Yep.
Um, and that what they did was they showed that the ACA and healthcare protections are actually not that big of a priority to them because they caved, right?
Yep.
And that's like a bad thing to do, and that's not something that the right can necessarily attack them on because then Democrats would be like, "Well, at least we tried. You're the ones that are opposing it." But it does mean that challengers from any other place, not necessarily even the left, can ding them on it, right?
Yeah.
And so if the party cares, I would say, and I definitely don't care about this, but if the party cares about saying the people who are in power now should stay in power, we have a responsibility to protect the people that were elected and that are working with us, and that we don't want primary chaos coming up, then this does matter. You know, it
Yeah.
matters in that sense because if I was running for Congress or if I was running for Senate and I was running against one of these people who's sort of more in the center of and they said no, I'd just be like, no one believes you, you know? Like no one
Yeah.
believes you. You're part of the problem. You're part of the establishment that is caving on everything. And not only were you caving on everything, you don't even really have the honesty or the integrity to tell the truth about how the thing happened, right? Like
Yep.
you just threw Dick Durbin in front of the bus and said, "Dick."
It's your time.
Yeah, like
Uh,
Dick, like George Soros could buy a real nice boat, you know? You're gonna get that Soros boat and you could just drive it around, you know? You can like go to Bill Maher and then you can in New York City, you can do the boat.
just
I don't
enjoy
know.
your boat.
Yeah. And then you can boat down to Florida or something like that. Like you can do whatever. But
Nice life.
or like who else was it? Oh yeah, Fetterman.
Yeah.
Like finally you're gonna get to like not have to be a senator anymore, you know?
Yeah. 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 His
Oh
most fervent dream.
yeah, you don't have to do this anymore. You can just stay at home and be a fucking asshole. You know,
Oh
like that seems
God.
to be what you want to do. So just do that.
He's
Um
gonna end up with a podcast, dude. I'm telling you, just like an unhinged podcast, Fetterman.
I'm surprised he doesn't already have a podcast.
I
His
know.
what would he what's he even gonna podcast about? He doesn't care about anything, you
No,
know?
no.
Like what he's gonna pretend to care about the Eagles, you know? And, like his
Yeah.
podcast will be
Just
half
like
about
Dickie's shorts ads constantly,
yeah,
Just
exactly. It's gonna be it's gonna be half about the Eagles and the other half is him
uh,
gonna be like complaining about the
is
guy
he an
who's like
Eagles
fixing
fan?
his fucking toilet or something like that in his house. Be like, have you dealt with these contractors ever or something like that? That's
Yeah,
what
yeah,
it's
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
be. It's just gonna be him fucking bitching about stuff. I mean,
Wait,
that's
is
like
he an Eagles fan, Jay? Or is
I
he a Bert?
assume so.
Or I imagine him in my head like a Steelers fan. I don't know, but
Why? Is it
yeah, like the Eagles are left coded. The Steelers are like moderate, like dickhead coded. So I don't know. I think I don't know. I think he's a Steelers guy in my head. That's how I
are the
imagine
Eagles
him.
really the left coded team? I don't know if that's even
Yeah, in Pennsylvania for sure. Of the two,
no. That's
yeah, because like the Steelers like steel, like both like Steel Town, but also people who identify with that.
they're like
Like even if
Western
they,
Pennsylvania.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Okay. I don't know. The Eagles don't feel very left coded to me. You know.
I don't know. Jalen Hurts pro union.
Yeah, you keep saying that, but there's been no evidence that that's true. Um, yeah. So I guess like I can see I can see what Tim Miller is saying, right?
That's
I
a
just think
reasonable
that the
case.
problem
Yeah.
is that like their problem right now isn't running against Republicans. Their problem is running against other Democrats, and um and I think it's great that for that reason, if we're going to be accelerationists about it, which you and I tend to be accelerationists
Mhm.
about almost everything, which is a very concerning quality that we have on this podcast. There was this guy some guy, it's very strange. I said I wasn't gonna complain about it, but, I wrote this piece about, and you would have hated it, but I wrote this piece for my column last week, and it was
Mhm.
about how I felt like basically there's too much panic about sports gambling right now. And the
Oh,
reason
sure.
why I thought there was too much panic about sports gambling was because, like, basically the feds are clearly running some sort of like weird sting operation to try and discredit athletes, right?
Mhm.
And that they're doing things like and none of it even adds up. They're like, the integrity of the game is compromised because Chauncey Billups was cheating at poker. And like, well, it doesn't really have that much to do with the game. And
Yeah,
also,
yeah.
it's like, that's what you got? Like, I was expecting more, you know? So I wrote that piece, and then this guy, Albert Bonico at Defector, who I know and who I've had friendly conversations, just wrote this like really like over the top 2012 styled like takedown where it just like insulted me the whole time and said that I'm like this fake person, et cetera, et cetera. Right.
Oh, that's odd.
Yeah,
I'm
it was honestly more like there's like kind of like I was just like read it and I was like, you put a lot of effort into it to this, and I've never had a problem with you, but you're just like you're like insulting like my integrity and everything. Anyway, I didn't like it was just
I
weird.
believe you believe your bad sports betting take, Jay. I
Yeah,
believe
but
that you believe it with
that's what he was
integrity.
saying. He was like, he doesn't even believe this. I was like, no, I
Oh,
believe
I
it.
know. I believe you believe your dog shit sports
I was
betting
in Las
takes.
Vegas 48 hours ago, like I believe it. Anyway, my point is that in the comments, right? Um, there was like there's a lot of comments, and it was like some of them were like, Kang used to be good, but then he started doing this podcast with that dickhead Tyler Harper, and now he sucks.
I corrupted you.
Yeah, and so when I was reading the comment, which I shouldn't have done anyway, obviously, but I was on one because I was pissed off that this guy
Yeah,
who I've
yeah.
only been nice to in my entire life decided to like insult
That's
me,
the
but like
worst, you
honestly, like
know?
also kind of like
Yeah.
say nasty things about my kid. Um, I was like, I was like, yeah, fuck these people, and then fuck him. And then I was like, but are they right? Has Tyler made me worse?
You're overcompensating for my reactionary ticks.
Yeah. I was like,
I've negatively
have my
polarized you
takes
into we
gotten
should do
worse
more
because of Tyler?
spirits.
But it did cross my mind, so Tyler, watch yourself, like you might be the reason why.
Every time your column's lampooned, you're just gonna send me all the negative feedback about it. Like this is on you. Yeah.
Anyway, all right. So, why were we talking about that? I don't remember.
I don't know, but someone had a good comment in the chat, which is that the whole country saw Trump trying to actively starve people while throwing Great Gatsby style parties and tearing down the White House. I mean, I do think people care because of that stuff, right? Like, I agree with you. I mean, I both agree with you in the way that it's going to shake out in terms of like primaries. Like, I think this is going to be a lot of red meat for sort of like dem on dem primary violence, but I also think a lot of people were really mad about, like really blame the Republicans. And polling showed that. I mean, I think by like a 10-point plus gap, the public blamed Republicans for the shutdown. And I kind of just feel like, morally speaking, right? Like if you were going to go to the mat for ACA for 40 days and contribute to people not getting their food stamps and everything else, right? Like I feel like you got to die on the hill if that's what you're doing because otherwise you just like cause people a lot of financial distress for 40 days for basically no reason, right? So like I don't know, like I just and maybe you're right, like maybe the coalition was fracturing and they just like they couldn't hold it together anymore. That's possible, but I don't know, like I do feel like if you're gonna, like I said, if you're gonna, you know, plant a flag that you're going to do this. Like, I think you have to go the whole way because otherwise you just, you know, contributed to a lot of financial hardship for people, lots and lots of people for really nothing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the problem. It's like, okay, what is politics, right? And if you think about it purely in a Tim Miller type of way, right, which is like, what are the electoral gains and losses, which I think is an okay way to think about it. But I also think that in some ways it's quite depraved. Not to say Tim is depraved, but that type of thinking is depraved in a way
Yeah.
because it means that nothing really matters and that it's all kayfabe, right? Which is a fine argument to make, right?
Yeah.
Um, that you would give up and that you would say, no, that wasn't really our point. Our point wasn't actually to save this provision, like to get to save this part of the ACA. Our point was just to hurt Trump.
Yeah.
And that's why all these people, that's why my flight got canceled, you know?
Yeah.
That's why all these people have been were extremely worried about their SNAP benefits. That's a reason why. Like, then you're like, all right, fuck you, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't care about you that much, right? Now you can give some grand argument about why we need to do this and that you are the only ones that will actually pass these bills, and in the long term this is the pragmatic thing to do, and I can buy that. But there's still a larger part of my brain that's just like, you know what, fuck you, don't play around with my life, right? And
Yeah.
that's like that's a real thing too. um, and that's what it feels like. The best case scenario that Tim Miller is laying out, the Steelman case, as you put it, is kind of like we're going to fuck with your lives for our own party's gain, right?
Yeah.
And some people under that rubric will just be like, well, I'm not going to get my ACA anyway. So I'm just going to vote for the people that, are either going to be coming up, or I'm just going to be never vote again, right?
Yeah.
Like a TSA man, it sounds like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like, just like, I'm not going to vote again. And I think about that myself. I'm just like, if this is what politics is, and if you listen, the unfortunate thing, I thought about it because we had that conversation about how the worst people to be on Twitter are academics. Like they've done more damage to
For
the
sure.
field of to the American Academy than anything else by being on Twitter. I don't know if that's true. I actually think that political operatives being on Twitter has also been like
Oh yeah.
deeply, deeply damaging, because like whatever illusions that you might have that this thing is not just like Veep,
Yeah. 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 They're like
bullshit, but
Machiavellian super operators. No.
right, right. And then you're like, oh, these people are not, they think they're Machiavellian super operators and they conduct themselves in such a way, but they're fucking idiots. And the
Yeah.
reason why I know that they're fucking idiots is because they're posting all their thoughts
Yeah. Yeah.
in a public forum where I can read them. Like, I wish that they were smarter, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I wish they were actually more evil, right?
Right. Right. Right.
But they're not. They're just like some dork who went to, one of four schools, right?
Exactly.
And they're like,
Theater kid from Kenyon College.
yeah, well, that's one person, but like it's not even that, like, like that model of it where it's like a short
Yeah.
story writer and they're creating a grand theory of it, I actually find somewhat more interesting. Like that's like whatever his name was, like that's the short story writer who went on to became it, Ben Rhodes, right?
Yeah.
Um, it's more just like a government major from Harvard who doesn't really understand math, who has a bunch of charts, who's like saying that these charts say this, this, and this, or somebody at Yale and being like, well,
Yeah.
now we must do this, and here are all my charts. And then you're like, oh, well, your charts are kind of bullshit.
Yeah.
And you're the one that's advising this, you know?
I saw a thing the
And then
other
you
day
just
that
think, oh, this is untenable because these people are like, they're not as Machiavellian or smart as they think they are. So I feel like they should all get off Twitter too, you know?
yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
No, I saw a thing the other day. It was from a couple years ago, but it was about some Silicon Valley guy was arguing that like theory is dead, like having hypotheses about things, and it's been replaced with just data, right? Because like
Right.
if you're working with data at scale, you actually don't need to like theorize why something is correlated. You can just say, well, it seems to be XYZ based on the data, right? We don't know why, but this is what the data says. And I feel like that kind of like the decline of like having a theory of the case is like part of the issue we have with like political consultants and pundits. Like all they have is like the data and the charts, but they have like no theory. They don't think in like narrative terms about anything, you know? And I think like you can really see that on in their tweets. Like all they can do is point to polling and, focus groups. And yeah, I don't know. It's data brain,
Well, I don't. So I think that person has it backwards, actually. I think that people do have a theory about it and they create the data to fit the theory. And
Oh, sure.
what the data does is that it basically makes the theory seem unassailable to very stupid people who, you know, we're talking like the 100 to 110 IQ range people, right? Like, but who are like were very well educated.
Middle bandwidth.
Right? Yeah, we're doing race
Just
science.
slightly above average. Yeah, Jay's pulling out the
We're
race
talking about the
IQ.
bell curve. Yeah, no, I don't really think IQ is real, but still, you can imagine like a very not
Yeah.
someone who's not that smart
Yeah.
who went to one of these fancy colleges because they went to prep school or whatever, and then they're connected, so they go work in Washington. They start getting this job, and they, I don't know, their parents buy them some sort of like house in Georgetown, and then they walk around in a Brooks Brothers red tie like a fucking dickhead. And then they, and then, and then, and then that person basically says, we need to do the X, Y, and Z, all these things, which of course just like,
Yeah.
it's just like every prior that they have their theory is what, because they're not creative people, right? These are not creative people. These are not people who like can think in ways that are creative to solve a problem. They're just emotional people who react about things when their personal
Yeah.
self-interests are attacked. And so then they come up with a whole theory about it, and then they hire some nerd to come and make fake data up, right? And they do like fake polling or whatever, and then they present it all, and then they have intermediaries in the media. This is not this is not a conspiracy. It's just that some people in the media are also within that exact intelligence range. We might be too, you know? Like,
The
I'm not that
110 to
smart.
120 IQ bandwidth.
Bro, so my daughter has this math thing, right? She has like the supplemental math thing, and it's like all these. It's like this Belarusian woman many decades ago came to Berkeley, and she tried to impart the uh, the way they learn math in the Soviet bloc,
Oh, wow.
right? Which is like the kids would get together and they would be given a difficult problem, and they would have to do it together, right? And the problems were conceptual and interesting, right? This is for third graders,
Mhm.
and they're like puzzle problems. And I was doing the problem with my daughter last night because she has Math Circle today. She has it right now, actually. And I could not figure this shit out, you know?
Getting stumped by Belarusian math.
It was so fucking hard.
That's
It was
Soviet
like
bloc math.
so the question was Aaron has 180 Pokemon cards, right?
Okay.
And Sally has 180 Pokemon cards, and she gives them out to all of her friends. But you don't know how many friends there are, right?
Sure.
And Aaron got the most number of cards, right? What is the smallest number of cards that Aaron could possibly have gotten? It's
Well,
fucking hard.
that is hard. Yeah.
Yeah. What's your first guess, though? Oh, and none of the kids can get the same number of cards.
But you don't know how many kids there are, right?
You have no idea how many kids there are. You just know that like they can't all have gotten one, right? Because they all have to get a different number of cards, and they can't all have gotten two. So they all have to get a different number of cards.
I have no clue. That is hard.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know.
really fucking hard.
What is the answer? Did you find out?
Anyway, I asked Chat. So I was watching it.
You asked
my
ChatGPT.
parenting.
I burnt a tree and dumped a bottle of water on the ground to figure out this Belarusian math.
Yeah, exactly. Just unplugged the computer.
I was in Walmart earlier. I needed a stand for my iPad, and I was in Walmart earlier, and like this kid I was checking out, he's like, "Do you like jokes?" And I was like, "I mean, I guess." Like when someone asks that, you just have to say yes. I was like, "Sure, whatever."
Sure.
And he's like, "Look what I made." And it was like a water bottle in the shape of the state of Mississippi that he had generated with AI. And I was like, I don't even know. Like, one, this is not a joke, but like, two, all I could think of is like you like dumped a bottle of water on the ground to generate this godforsaken image, you know? Like whatever, I don't know. What generation is under Gen Z? Is it Gen Alpha?
Yeah, Alpha.
Yeah, whenever like Gen Alpha puts us into gulags for letting climate change run wild, I feel like they're gonna like show us these things. You know, they're gonna be like, "Do you remember in 2025 when you used ChatGPT to make an image of a fucking water bottle to stand in Mississippi?" And then you're gonna say yes, and then they're gonna get your lashings.
I asked it twice, so I burned like 2 acres of trees because I couldn't figure this out, and it got it wrong, obviously, the first time.
Wait, ChatGPT got it wrong? That's awesome.
Yeah, it said it was 27, and then it's not 27. And then I have like a Slack group that's all my fantasy baseball and basketball people, and I asked them. One of them is a math professor, and they got it wrong too, you know? And then eventually the math professor did figure it out, but why? I don't remember. Why am I talking about this? I've completely forgotten.
I don't know. I got so invested in the answer to this.
The answer is
this
19,
question.
by the way.
How? Where does it even come from?
So basically, it's like Aaron gets 19, and then one of the kids gets 18, one of the kids gets 17, 16, 15, 14, 13. And then no kid gets 10 because you can take out 10, and then the next kid gets 9. Anyway, it's kind of like half Fibonacci sequences and half like sort of spatial reasoning type of stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, my strategy with dealing with this while I was pretending that I knew the answer, but I clearly didn't know the answer,
Mhm.
was just to, like, criticize, just like, "You know, your number penmanship is not very good right now."
Right.
I was, like, trying to tiger dad my way out of this situation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I had no fucking clue what the answer was. And I was just sitting there and I was like, I am lost. Anyway, oh yes, my point was that I'm not very smart, because I couldn't do a third
3rd
grader
grade Belarusian math
math
problem.
problem. And you couldn't do it either.
Oh, no, definitely not. And I don't think if I had more time, I would have got to 19.
There's
I don't
no way
know.
that you would have gotten it.
No, no,
No
for sure
offense,
not.
but you're like a word cell. There's no way you would have got
Definitely
There's no
not.
way you got that
100%.
one.
Oh, God.
But this is my point. You and I are not that smart, right? We're in the media, and if you put a chart in front of our faces,
Hmm.
because of our contrarian personalities, we'll probably think that it's fake, right?
Yeah,
However, if we were of the personality to think that data was cool and that we believe the charts, we still wouldn't know if it was fake or not. We would just think it was real, right?
yeah,
And so then, that's my point. The data is there to make the theory unassailable. And that what we have in the Democratic Party right now, or the problem that we have, is that it is run entirely by these types of people, right?
yeah,
And that there's no creativity, and they can only think about things in terms of electoral results and whether or not it actually hurts or not. And when you come down to it, what it is that it's a bunch of people like you and me just talking out our ass about whether it's going to hurt, or Tim Miller talking out our ass pretty much about whether it's going to hurt them or not, right?
yeah, yeah,
And you would hope in that instance that there are people who know better, who are listening to our podcast or listening to Tim Miller and be like, that those dudes don't know what they're talking about. The problem is that the people who are listening to it, who have the power to make decisions, know even less than we do at
yeah.
times, right? And so that's the problem. Problem is, like, at that point, you might as well just make a qualitative argument saying, I'm just not going to play politics with these people's paychecks and these people's lives. And that's why we're going to end the fucking shutdown.
Don't you think that's what they should have said, man? Like, I mean, to me, like, I just feel like the narrative should have been, look, this has gone on for 40 days. We gave this an honest try to bring them to the table. They won't come to the table. They want to screw you on healthcare.
Right.
Americans are going hungry. We're going to be the adults here and, like, make sure people have food in their pantries, right? Like, I don't understand why that is not the message, right? Like, that's something people can understand. I mean, I still don't think I would have supported the cave, but there is, like, a way to tell this kind of story in, like, humane terms. And I just feel like, yeah, I'm baffled that that was not the move here.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so it brings up another question I wanted to ask you about, right? All right, so their position, the thing that we all think that they're doing, are you drinking booze?
No, I'm drinking coffee.
Oh, okay, that's crazy. It's like fucking 10 o'clock where you are.
Yeah, I can drink
Um,
coffee and go right to sleep. I don't know.
um, it suggests that there's a lot of fear.
Yeah.
Right? So that if they truly did this and they're like all the old people, it's like a Squid Game or something like that, where they're like, well, let's sacrifice all the old people and and then all the
I
rest of
do think that's what happened, though, right? Like,
right.
it's all the olds or people who aren't up for it. Like, I think that's clearly what happened.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say that's true, right?
Yeah.
And we say that we're going to just pretend that it was a splinter cell that just happened to be all the people who are not up for reelection for a long time. They all happen to be in very blue states, like in the Northeast. Not very blue, but like states where they're going to have a pretty good electoral advantage in the Northeast, or they're Fetterman who doesn't give a fuck, right? It just happens to be those are the people who say we can't do this anymore, right?
Mhm.
Um, uh, like the fact that they would do that suggests they're really afraid of something. The fact that they would lie and make up something, right? So, what are they afraid of? Do you think?
I don't know. I think it's a really good question. I think you're right that they're clearly afraid of something. I mean, the thing I have wondered about too is, like, how much I've talked to some folks proximate to the lobbying industry, and I just, like, wonder how much of this is. There are a lot of industries right now who are hurting because people don't have their SNAP payments and can't shop at Walmart, for example. And, so I do wonder, like, how much of this is just, like, a product of the donors are getting restless about the shutdown, like the airlines, like, there's, yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I partly that's what I've, like, thought maybe was the motivating force here. But I don't know. I mean, what do you think they're afraid of?
You thought it was the donors?
Yeah, I mean, I think they were afraid of like keeping the shutdown going because I think a lot of the donors were seemed to be pretty pissed about because it's hurting their bottom lines.
I think they're terrified of like a Tea Party type of thing happening. And I think they are very afraid of that. I
Mhm.
think they are afraid of like people like Jen Welch, of I've had it, or they're afraid of some of the print pundits who are coming out and basically being like, I've had it with this party.
Mhm.
Like people like Paul Krugman, for example, right? Who
Yeah,
in
yeah.
his since being freed from the New York Times has turned into actually kind of interesting super lib, like I feel like he lives next door to me, and
Yeah.
that he
He said he's like, I left the Times to be more interesting, and it does seem like he is in fact
I
more
find him more
interesting.
interesting than
Yeah, for
him.
sure. When he said that, I was like, okay, guy, and I was like, oh, like he can write a little bit, and he's a little spicier.
I kind of like that.
Yeah,
Um, Like, I just think that, like, you know me, like, the 2 things I think about the most are, like, it's like what we would call, and I don't mean this in a pejorative sense, but it is
Mhm.
a funny term, but, like, the wine mom revolution, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
middle-aged women, mostly white women who are going to really come out in full force. Now, they might have been radicalized by Dobbs, but, like,
yep,
that, the political valence of that has faded a little bit, and now they're just pissed off about everything, right? They're
yeah,
pissed off about daycare. They're pissed off about the price of everything. They're pissed off about how these they're like their friends or even like the people, maybe even it's even like the people who work at their kids' daycare are
yeah,
getting ripped out of the streets by these fucking thugs in masks. And that they basically say, I have these children and I think everything is going to hell right now, including
yeah,
climate, right?
yeah.
Maybe they're mad about gun control. They could be mad about any number of things. And then,
And they're mad that their kids are watching it. Like that's something a lot of
right,
moms have to. They're just like they're really mad that like their kid is asking questions about what they're seeing on the news or on TV or
right,
that. Like,
right,
yeah,
right.
yeah,
Right, and that is a sense that the world is ending, that the way of life that they enjoyed growing up is not gonna be accessible to their kids, and that they're pissed the fuck off about it, and that's very powerful because they're not wrong, by the way,
no,
right? They
no,
are not
no,
wrong. Like, the way of life that we all grew up under is under direct threat right now. There's no question about that. There is no question about that. Um, and they're a very powerful political force because they can organize quite quickly and because a lot of them do vote, you know?
yep,
Um, so that's the first one. And the second one, obviously, is the old resistance libs who I'm surrounded by here in Berkeley, California. And Krugman is like an amazing voice for that,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know? It's like when I like stood next to Robert Reich in the line at CVS here in Berkeley because he lives in Berkeley. And I thought about it. Well, the first thing I noticed, obviously, I knew it was him because he's quite short, right? He's like
ah,
I think he's 4'7" or 4'8".
like
Um,
with a four in front of the number, like four.
yeah, Robert Reich
Oh
is like
wow,
4'7" or something like that. So I was standing next to him in line at CVS, and I was like, wow, that's what 4'7" looks like, right?
mhm.
And then, but not in like a mean way.
No,
It was
sure,
just
sure,
like
sure,
kind of
sure.
just like,
Yeah,
oh
yeah.
yeah, so I mean, I was like, oh,
Limits the pool of people this
he's
could be.
remarkably short. Yes, yes, and that's also why I know it's him.
Yeah,
You
yeah, yeah.
know?
Right, right, right. Yeah.
It's like the opposite of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Like I wrote this profile of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar many years ago, and I hung out with him for a couple of weeks, and I realized that his life was hell because he could not go anywhere in like a hat and sunglasses, and
Sure, sure.
because he's
Because
7'3", Um, and Robert Reich, I think, is the opposite.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like obviously Robert Reich,
Right, of
right?
course.
But I was thinking about it and I was like, oh well, here is like a guy who is very influential within like of
Yeah.
small group of people that people like you and I sometimes don't think about very much, or at least we roll our eyes about, right? Like sort
Mhm.
of the Robert Reich, NPR, like resistance lib boomers who drive a Tesla and slap on the back, like I bought this before I knew he was crazy. Like all
Dude,
those
I was
people, it's
just
like
ranting about this on a different podcast, by the way. I hate that sticker so bad. I just feel
okay,
like
let's
you
not
have to
rant about that
you
sticker.
have to sell the Tesla or just like no
I
sticker.
agree. I agree with you, but
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
get that mad about it anymore because I see it every single day. But that population, I think, is so mad about them caving,
Yeah.
right? And that's where I think our next topic can come in, which is like we have theorized for a long time on this podcast, and I think it's the one thing. Actually, we're right about a few things.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think.
We were right about a lot of
Wrong
things. We
about
said Biden had to go early,
we probably shouldn't do victory laps because sometimes we do early victory laps because like we were both pro Kamala and we
Yeah.
did a huge victory lap about being pro Kamala and that did not end up.
Yeah, but we got off the coconut train pretty early, though. We sold our stock. We shorted
We
the
did.
market.
Oh yeah, I guess we did, but yeah, no, it wasn't good to do
Yeah.
the
We
flip
were.
flop in the middle
Yeah.
of it. Like we looked really stupid. But we have both been talking about like the sort of normie lib radicalization that's happening, and where do you think we are in this? And like because that's what I think Chuck Schumer is afraid of.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's why they had to come up with this whole elaborate ruse pretending that there is a splinter cell that emerged within the Democratic Party that Dick Durbin has suddenly turned into like, fucking um who's the guy like Obi-Wan Kenobi or something like that and
Yeah.
now like leading a resistance or something. Like it just doesn't make any sense, right? Um or that like John Fetterman bothered to show up to a meeting, right? Like Dick Durbin is sending out
Yeah,
like a
that's the
secret.
biggest tell.
Yeah.
Fetterman showed up to vote.
Yeah, Dick Durbin is like sending out this group text, on WhatsApp on Signal or something, and he's like, "This is the new, this is the splinter cell. Let's all meet on Zoom in 4 hours to talk about how we can end this shutdown." And then John Fetterman showed up to that. There's no way he's showing up.
Not,
You
yeah,
know?
exactly.
Right, right. So I think that's what they're afraid of. I
They
think they're
traded
afraid
him
of
something. They were like, John, you don't have to come to the next 10 votes if you just.
that. Yeah, exactly. You can do this. It's a Zoom call. You can just do it from your toilet, while you watch the Steelers or whatever you do. I think that's what they're afraid of. What do you think?
I think you're totally right. And I have been shocked by, particularly post them caving on the shutdown, just how angry normie libs are, and the sort of normie libs that I usually think of as more like sort of like party people that like the Democratic Party, not simply like Democratic Party voters, but people who like trust, like Harris a lot, trust them to do a good job, etc. I mean, they are mad, right? And I think this is all over. I was talking to a buddy who does politics stuff in Pennsylvania, and he was talking about one of the a local mom group there basically has like gotten really sort of like moved way to the left over the last like 2-3 years, but that's really turbocharged in the last year, and I think it's because of all this stuff. Because if you look at, and actually I was at an event the other day, and I was just like talking to some regular voter type people for, just working on something. And I was, asking them like what they think about the moment we're in. And like some of the moms were so angry, and they were people, one of them in particular was like, I was not somebody who was like a Bernie style person, but like he's one of the only people who's fighting, like, and saying
Right.
no,
Right.
And I think there are a lot of this kind of voter, and I agree with you, like I'm not using wine mom in a pejorative sense at all, but I think there's like a certain kind of wine mom, normie lib person who is getting negatively polarized to the left because of how incompetent the moderate center is at just like doing anything at all to contest Trump, And so I think there are a lot of people that like, do they agree with like democratic socialism or whatever? Probably not. But are they looking at the landscape and they have basic pattern recognition and are like, okay, well, the people who are actually like fighting and who are like, like calling this stuff out are the leftward wing of the Democratic Party, and the people who are laying down or just doing like performative nonsense, like 20-hour speeches on the Senate floor, that's more of the middle. And like I'm going to go with the people who are fighting. So I think I genuinely think this kind of subset of like normie lib moms in particular are being sort of polarized to the left by just incompetence, because these people hate losing, right? Like we talked about this last week, but I think this is the big thing, is they're so angry that these people have lost to Trump twice, right? And they're just like, they're not,
As they
they're
should be.
done.
Aren't you mad about? I'm so fucking mad.
So
about
mad.
that.
Yeah.
Like
So
it's
mad.
like, how did you lose to this guy?
Yeah.
And then like, how did you? Like, what are you ever doing? Right?
Yeah.
Like, what is the idea now? So, I think you're right. I think that basically what has happened is that they're not even being pushed left
Mhm.
politically. But
Yes.
if they
Yes.
were
Yeah.
going to like a politician, they're going to like the alternative politician. And the alternative politician, a lot of times right now, is to the left, right?
Mhm.
And so somebody like Zoran, right, just becomes a basic national pooling of everybody who's pissed off at people like Andrew Cuomo, right? And they're
Hmm.
like, "Can you not run Andrew Cuomo?" And they're like, "No, we're gonna do it. You know,
Hmm.
we're really gonna
You're
do
gonna
it."
like it.
Yeah, you're gonna like it. And you know who is big? Like, do you know who endorsed him? Bill Ackman. And you're like, shut the like, are you out of your
Donald
fucking
Trump,
mind?
Bill Ackman, Eric
Donald
Adams.
Trump and Bill Ackman. And so I think that what's happened is that we have this lag period right now, and I think it's very similar to what happened on the right with the Never Trump media people, right?
Yeah,
Where they have a constituency of nobody after a while, and that they are so far behind that they don't see that the strategy talk and the things that they do don't resonate with anybody because everyone's just like, I don't even like. What strategy are we talking about? You guys lose every time, you know? It's like it's like if my dog was a football coach, you
yeah.
know? And, like, you know, it's like picking plays by, like, you know, whatever, like eating like a fucking whatever you put 4 bagels out in front of him and then he eats the one, that's a play that you call. And then the play is like, you know, basically like a flea flicker and the quarterback runs back in his own end zone and takes a knee or something like that. And
Yeah.
then you're like, "All right, you know, well, what about the, you know, like this is a good dog, you know, this dog is good." Like, it just doesn't make any sense. It's just like, no, maybe the dog is not good at calling. You know, the dog's fine. He's a cute dog, but maybe he's not good at being a football coach. And that's basically where people are at right now. They just say they don't trust the people who are
Yes.
making these types of decisions. Now, the end result of that is that during the Trump thing, everyone was like, "Oh no, there are reasonable Republicans. There are people who are going to not reject Trump, et cetera, et cetera." That just ended up being not true during Trump
Hmm.
won, right? That
Yeah.
the Republicans did vote for Trump, and they voted for him again in 2024, and they've most of them voted for him in 20. They've voted for him 3 times now, and then as that has happened, the actual number of people that the Never Trump people, Republicans actually represent has shrunk,
Yeah.
right? The same thing is happening right now, I think, with the resistance people and the sort of Democratic people, the Democratic pundits and the Democratic operatives, the sort of media and politics sphere that is basically saying, let's all be reasonable. Let's like try and come together. It's not so bad, right?
Yeah.
Like we still have good things in this party. Those people represent nobody right now. I don't know a single person who's like that except for people in the media.
Yep.
The only people that I talk to on a daily basis who think that way are fucking columnists and and TV people. Those are
Yeah.
the only people who think that way that I ever talk to.
Yeah,
Everyone
they're
else.
always like they're trying their best. It's like no, they're fucking not. What are you talking about? They're trying their best.
It's just weird. So you have a basically what it is. You have a phantom message out there that has no constituency, that has no buy-in, right? And um, meanwhile, everybody is getting pushed towards something, but they don't know what it is. But the thing they're being pushed towards is drain the swamp, basically,
Yes.
right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so
Lib
we are
drain the
now
swamp.
having what I think is the liberal version of Drain the Swamp coming out. And I find that to be very interesting because it's just like, well, who's the swamp? Well, obviously Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries,
Hmm.
all these people are the swamp.
Hmm.
Nancy Pelosi just like was like peaced out, right? She just
Hmm.
retired and
Went out on top, took her bag, and ran.
she's like, I'm out. I think she's smart enough to see what's happening, right? She
Yeah,
she
yeah.
she
She
quit
doesn't
right
want to go out a
before
loser, you
she
know?
left right before this cave.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
not let's point that
Oh,
out.
that's a good point. Yeah,
Yeah, she
yeah,
like, you think Nancy is gonna get sullied
yeah.
by this? She's not
Hell
getting she's
no.
like, "No, I was out of there," you know? Um,
You don't accrue $137 million over your course of time in Congress by being a dummy.
yeah, no, but, like, Nancy Pelosi is many things, but she is not stupid. And it must have been very hard for her to finally retire, but she's just like,
Nope.
I'm not holding this," you know?
Yeah,
Like, "I'm dumping this," you know? So, she retires, and then we're just like, "All right, well, um" what's left, right? Like, what is going on? Like, who who is left about who believes in this type of stuff anymore? And the answer is almost nobody believes in it anymore.
yeah,
And that's a scary thing. Now, I still think that some of these people will get reelected by inertia, right? Like
yeah,
there won't be a credible challenger that can come. But I don't agree with Tim Miller.
yeah.
I do think it will affect the midterms, and I think it'll
Totally.
affect it both in the way that they'll have challenges, and I think it'll also affect it in the sense that people will not show up in the same numbers that we thought they might, right? Because there is a type of voter who's going to just be like, fuck this, I'm not voting anymore for any of these people. And I do think it will suppress turnout in some way. And you saw it during the mayoral election and the huge turnouts in all the other elections last Tuesday, right? Like you saw that there were big turnouts for those, and I'm not sure that's happening again. So um, that's my take on it. All right, you want to talk about the next thing we're going to talk about?
Yeah,
These lives are like longer than our actual podcast, but I think that's okay.
yeah,
Um, okay, so I was thinking about this, and it was like because we're doing this live and we're doing this on Substack, and some of our operations, I think, will move more to Substack than before because before we were just a podcast and people found it on Apple. And we've said this a lot, which is, and it is really true, which is that part of it is laziness, but part of it is like I don't know, I don't even know what the right term is. Like we don't really want to charge people for this unless they
yeah,
really want to contribute. And we've always kept it as lo-fi as possible, and we've always tried to keep it native to a thing that people can discover it on. But now things are changing and we have to change too. And so use something like Substack, which I think is a good platform, and has a lot of discoverability things. Like we think it's good to do that, right? Like
yeah,
I've always been very comfortable with the audience size of this podcast because it's not huge, but it's also not tiny. It's significant enough that I feel like it's not wasting anyone's time to do it time and time again. But it's not so big that I have to worry about it ever, And I think that that's fine. But obviously, we don't want to die, and so now with all these people like Krugman, everybody like that moving to Substack, I was wondering what you thought about the platform
yeah.
right now, right? Like, what do you think about it, like in terms of the amount of influence that it has, like compared to say something like the opinion page of the New York Times, which is a place that you and I have both written for. I
Mhm.
was an employee there, and I could see my numbers, right? Like I
Yeah,
could see how many people read the stuff that I wrote, which was like a lot of fucking people.
yeah,
Not that I was so popular, as like actually like I did pretty well there, but it was like anyone who was there did amazing,
yeah,
And it wasn't because of me, it was just that like I was writing for the opinion page. And now people have their own sort of fiefdoms, right? Everyone from like Krugman, Derek Thomas, all these Thompson, or all these people have come. Derek Thomas is the linebacker. Thompson, all these people have
oh,
sort of
yeah,
created their own little brands, and they're promoting ideas in a type of way, and they're writing in a slightly different style than they would at these big publications. So yeah. Anyway, I was wondering what you thought about this right now.
yeah. I mean, I think it's I texted you about this. I've been reading this book called the Culture of Crisis by this guy Olivier Roy, who's a French sociologist, and I've been thinking about it all week or two since I started reading it. And his basic argument is that mass culture has given way to subcultures, right? Like we used to have mass culture in the sense that there were like these big legacy institutions like Hollywood and cable news and sort of like, publishing, whatever, and that they would, or music, and they would put out these things that were really sort of like unifying cultural forces, like the Beatles or like a big blockbuster like Jaws or whatever, right? And everyone would see it or everyone would know the Beatles. And he basically argues that now mass culture has just fragmented into subcultures, that there are no longer, like, yes, these legacy institutions still exist. So, yes, there's still CBS or whatever, and yes, there are still late night talk shows, and yes, there's still SNL, and yes, there's still people who are popular, but like those things themselves have become more subcultures than like unifying mass cultures, right? Like there's a specific demographic group now that watches cable news, for example. I mean, even if you think about something like Taylor Swift, right, who's like the probably the most popular pop star in the world, like she's successful not because she has broad demographic appeal, but because she's been able to mobilize an intense subculture, right? Like the vast majority of her fans are millennial white women in the suburbs making between $25,000 and $75,000 a year, right? So like it's a really specific
25,000?
yeah, it's interesting. I was looking at her, like the demographics of her
Like that's an actual number. It's not something like you made up.
no. So yeah, it's like the majority of our listeners, I think, make between 25 and 50,000. They're like white liberal women from the
Okay.
suburbs. Yeah, but and then 25% are like over 100,000. But anyway, the reason I bring this up is that like I do think um, we are in this moment where like punditry is fragmenting into just like subcultures, right? I think something like the Groyper shit is like a part of this, but I think increasingly like everything is just subculture. We are all getting like these like boutique information silos and news silos, right? And so I think, yeah, I think Substack is a part of that. I think it's only going to be more the case, right? And I don't even think we're at this point. It's like, you know, yes, the New York Times reaches a ton of people very obviously, but I think that has also become a subculture in a way, right? Like there's a certain kind of person who still reads the New York Times, right? And there's a certain kind of person who like follows all these Substacks or whatever. But yeah, I do think Substack is, and not necessarily like the platform itself, but just like that kind of model of like, okay, there are these people whose politics I like or whose takes I find interesting, and I'm going to follow them. And that's going to be like my main source of like information or like punditry. Yeah, I think that's like the future. I think everything's subculture now, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, like, if you think about the structure of it, or if you think about the information structure of it, um, one thing that used to be true as early as like recently as like 2 years ago is that the platform itself really mattered, right? That
Mhm,
um, I remember when I left ESPN. This wasn't about me, but like it was just about people leaving ESPN because I wasn't like on TV or I wasn't like somebody whose brand was attached to ESPN. I didn't even have a brand. I was just some dude who wrote for Grantland, right? But I remember some guy who worked at ESPN a long time ago was like, he wasn't saying, again, he wasn't saying this to me to say, don't leave ESPN. He was just saying abstractly that when people leave ESPN, they usually, like most of them, disappear. And that
mhm,
the only real, like, Keith Olbermann was obviously a counterexample. Dan Patrick was a counterexample. And, but everyone else had sort of like disappeared into nothingness. They like maybe joined like a media startup or something like that, and that you didn't hear from them again, right? Like once they left ESPN. That's true. There's many such cases that you can think of that way, right? Um, and that used to also be that sort of change into, well, if you leave this platform, then you can't have the same audience, right? So Twitch was one like that, where it's just like, okay,
mhm,
um, if you are not on Twitch and you have to join like Kick or whatever, any of these like new startup streaming sites that pay these guys like $10 million to just be the streamer there, like those guys they make a lot of money, but they also kind of disappeared, right? Like they
mhm,
would go away. YouTube was thought of that way, and Twitter was really thought of that way, where many of our colleagues, including me for a while, thought if I wasn't on Twitter, then I might as well not exist in the media, right? And
mhm.
that's why you start tweeting all the time. Now, because everything is clipped and redistributed across all platforms, like it doesn't even really matter what platform you're on. Nick Fuentes, who is right now obviously the most influential political streamer in America, he's on this thing called Rumble. Have you ever been on Rumble?
No, no. And I had to actually Google earlier because I was like, where does this shit come from? And it was, yeah,
Right.
it must have been
Rumble.
Rumble, some platform.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
But you have probably seen many clips of this.
Tons, and that's why I looked earlier because I was like, I see this guy all the time. I have no, and Candace Owens was the other one. I was like, I have no
Yeah.
idea where this shit comes from.
No idea
You know?
where they actually stream from because they're not streaming from like YouTube. Like Candace owns stuff sometimes, but like they're streaming from like he's been kicked out of all these platforms. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter because unless they ban the clips everywhere, which I think some of the places might start doing because, he's like him being really powerful is not great for America.
No bueno.
Um
No.
yeah. Um
It's a
but like
development to monitor for us
yeah,
media colors,
it's
as
a
you
little
put it.
concerning. It's actually he can always find some distribution channel where they're going to put where his fans are going to put his clips on, right? And so it is interesting where it's just like, all right, the institutional distribution channels don't matter anymore. Obviously, we all know that, right? Except for like the New York Times page, I think
Yeah.
matters, right? For us, right? The Daily matters, right? Like some of
Oh
the
yeah.
huge news franchises still matter.
Yeah.
And whether or not you go on ABC News or CBS News or something like that, that doesn't matter at all, right?
Mhm.
If you have like a contract with CNN and you go on CNN every once in a while, you sit on one of these panels where you like kind of spiritedly say shit to other people, that doesn't matter at all, right?
That
We
always
don't
looks
matter.
fun.
Huh?
That always looks fun.
It does look kind of, have you ever done that?
No, 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 no.
Oh man.
I got asked one time and I turned them down. I will leave. I will not mention the network, but there's like a really good tide for fishing, and I was like, they were like, "Can you come on?" I was like, "No, I gotta gotta fish,"
Yeah.
and they just were baffled by that as an answer. But
Yeah, I did it
it's,
a couple of times.
uh,
I
it
went
does look
on
fun.
I went on Morning Joe and I don't remember why. I think I had written some article. Anyway, I had like very long hair at the time because I hadn't
Like pandemic hair.
No, this was way before the pandemic. This was many years ago, and I had hair like here, and it was flowy.
Hmm.
Also, I was very fat at the time, you know? Anyway, so sometimes
You're really painting a picture, Jay.
yeah. No, there's photos of it, and the photos are horrible. So that was the first thing I remember from it was that I saw myself on television. I was like, "Oh no," And then the second thing I remember was that I was in a green room with Mark Halperin, and
Yeah.
he was just a dick,
Uh,
So then you go on, and then the lights are really bright, and then you say like three things, and then it's over, and then you get back in a black car, and they drive you back to your apartment in Brooklyn or something like that. Which that part is kind of fun.
that
It's not
sounds
that bad.
nice.
It's not that
Yeah,
bad.
yeah, yeah.
It's not that bad. But my point is that you can do all that you want and it's not gonna help you at all, really,
Mhm.
in terms of we could you and I could go on CNN once a week, and every single time we would just be introduced as the host of Time to Say Goodbye with the little link to
Mhm.
sign up for our Substack. I bet we get almost no subscribers from that type of
Yeah, yeah.
so um the channels have completely changed. The distribution has changed. And the question is whether writing itself can fit the new distribution channels.
Yeah.
And that I don't know. Seems like the answer is probably no. But can it live within one platform where people care about writing and are willing to pay for it because the population that cares about it is like mostly upper middle class, making a lot of money and wants to stay informed by people that they trust and like? Yes, maybe. And I think
Yeah.
that's what we're doing. But I don't know. I think that this live experiment is kind of interesting in that type of way because it is something that can be clipped and put out. Like when this live ends, Substack has some AI thing that generates like 6 clips and then auto posts them to YouTube and stuff like that. So maybe that's a
Dumping
good way to do
80 water bottles on the ground at a pop for each of those clips, Probably
it.
more than that. Just a whole acre of the Amazon just erased to the ground. Some sad ass monkey,
I don't even think it's really
his home's been taken.
so it's a so many things are tagged AI. I think it probably maybe it's AI. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I looked at the clips that it selected for our last live, and it wasn't actually that bad.
Oh,
It's actually kind of good. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
One of them like got 1,000 more than over 1,000 views on our YouTube channel, which is amazing because like we barely have a YouTube channel.
Right. Yeah.
And so I was like, that's not bad. Like 1,000
Yeah.
views. So you add that to, whoever our podcast. I don't know how many people, like 7 to 10,000 people listen to the podcast. And then I was like, well, it is kind of growing the listenership
Yeah.
overall. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Well, the last thing we wanted to talk about was related to this, which was that you sent me this article about how this year is one of the worst years for movie theaters ever and that October was the worst month for ticket sales in 27 years, and you wanna know our theories. I wanna know your theory first. What's your theory? Why is this happening?
Yeah, I mean, I just think I mean, this is not an original observation at all. I was really relying on you having something interesting to say about this, but I really think, it just seems like the movies are dead. Like I was thinking about the reason I was preoccupied with this is that um what was that movie? One Battle After Another, right? Which was won tons of critical acclaim. It seemed like everyone had seen it, right? Like my Twitter feed was just full of people talking about it. I had a bunch of friends that saw it. And that movie lost so much fucking money, right? And it's like, and obviously there are like dynamics, with movie financing that aren't just about like how many people actually see a thing. But I was like, shit, like even this thing that feels like it was like, oh, this is a really good movie that's having a moment. Like even that is losing money. It just feels like, it's movies are kind of over. I mean, I think it's like a combination of like there aren't a lot of good movies. I think that's like part of it.
You
Like
think that matters, though?
yeah, I do. I mean, I don't know. I kind of do. Yeah, like I think about that with like fiction too, right? Like how much of the crisis of people reading is just because like a lot of contemporary fiction is slop. And like I don't know. I think that's part of it. Like I mean, if you look at the like how people talked about like that movie Weapons, which I confess I did not see, or like Sinners or whatever. It was like revelatory because people were like, oh, like an actually fucking good movie for once, right?
Oh,
And
Sinners, yeah.
yeah, and it feels like that used to happen a lot more, where people were like, "Oh, there's like this thing, and we got to see it," And now that happens like 2 or 3 times a year. So, like, I don't know. I feel like part of it is like a quality thing. Obviously, streaming, like Netflix, it's competing with is part of it too. But I don't know. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I think that what's happened is that people stopped going and watch comic book movies. You
Yeah,
know, the attendance figures and the box office figures for Marvel movies have been declining, and that one of the theories out there is that once Avengers Endgame came out, which I think is maybe the highest grossing film of all time, um, that the arc was basically done and
Yeah.
that people's attention that they could hold for this type of specific movie that was basically carrying the entire industry started to wane,
Yeah.
right? And that Marvel movies were the only thing that were keeping the public's attention away from just complete fragmentation to separate Netflix shows or like social media or watching like YouTube, right? That there were these big events that would happen and that everyone would go and see them together and they would talk about them and that the Marvel movie became an event,
Yeah.
right? Like it was like an event. People would dress up to go to the theater and they would be sold out because people really wanted to see what happened next in these narratives. Now, I really don't watch these Marvel movies and it's mostly because um I don't know. I just like it's like not my thing. Like
Yeah. No,
I
I
was never
do.
like a superhero guy. And it's not like a snooty thing. Like I watch a lot of really stupid movies like the Fast Five, I've seen all the Fast and Furious movies, for example.
Really?
Oh yeah, yeah, I love them. But superhero stuff I'm not that into. I'm just like, I don't know, who cares, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, those went away, right? The supremacy of that went away, and that Hollywood has been trying to fill that with something. And that what is going to come next is very difficult to know what that is. Now, like a Paul Thomas Anderson movie is never going to break the box office,
Sure.
right? It's never going to be like a huge box office smash in the same way that a Marvel movie is. And so maybe there's like a way in which the movie industry reorganizes into some sort of thing where they make a lot of good movies again, right? Because those movies can have smaller budgets, they can have smaller runs or whatever, but it's not like a multi-billion
Yeah.
dollar franchise that they're trying to make. But I find that really hard to believe because, like, the way of thinking that actually made money is still going to be relied upon by the people who made that money. And
Yeah.
those people are still in power. And so bringing it to a more nimble system or whatever, I'm not sure. And the other problem that they have is that the streamers have stopped giving out money. You
Yeah.
know, I was talking to this guy tonight at soccer practice, and we were talking about the days of zero interest rates, right?
Hmm.
um, and how I was telling him, like, as somebody who sometimes dabbles in making movies or at least gets asked to like go to a meeting where some executive will not tell me the truth for a while and then we'll both waste our time. That those days were amazing because they would give out money to anybody and you didn't know where the money was going. You could go make a show and they could at least sell it to like Tubi or something like that, and that's all over.
Yeah.
And so what we're seeing, I think, is two things. The first is that purse tightening that happened after all the streamers stopped doing their acquisition wars and where they're just giving out money for everybody in the world to make a television show. That's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing the stuff that was made during that purse tightening phase. And so it's going to be kind of unambitious stuff and not stuff that like there's not enough variety of it for something to rise to the top.
Yeah.
Um, and then the second part of it, I think, is just that, like I said, we're just in this period where nobody knows what to do post Marvel movie. Like,
Yeah.
what do you do after the Marvel movies? Do you just do more Marvel movies? You know? Um, and there's always this like cycle of things that happen. Like, so for example, there was a period of time in Hollywood, like it's still kind of like this, but basically they would just license any brand that was like notable
Yeah.
and they would make a movie out of it, right? And so they started with comic books and they're like, okay, we'll license all the comic books and we'll make comic book movies. And then they moved to board games. Well,
Oh,
actually,
yeah.
they did like five things in between and then they finally got to board games. And remember, there was like a battleship movie that came out, and
Oh,
like,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's where all this came from. It was basically just people going down the line of smaller and smaller
Like hobbies.
and more absurd properties that they could license.
Yeah.
And then they got to basically the end. Now they don't have the other problem that we have in America that they don't have in Korea, which is basically what is eating a lot of the American Hollywood's lunch, is that in Korea they have a really robust kind of like I don't know what to call it, but it's sort of like a self-publishing
Hmm.
economy where people will like write little comic books and they'll like do little dramas and they'll write them out and they'll make like graphic novels or they'll turn them into short stories and they'll sort of self-publish them all.
Oh, cool.
And that the second that you make one of these and it goes viral, right? Like, because they have these sharing sites, kind of like Live Journal or whatever, like that. Once those go viral, then they get bought up by the production studios who then turn into Korean drama, right?
Hmm.
And so they have this endless supply of generated and tested
Yeah.
narrative stories that they can license that they know are going to be popular because at least the people who are on these organic reading platforms enjoyed them, right?
Yep.
Um, we don't really have anything like that here in America, right? Like, what do we have? Viral tweets? Well, they made a movie out of viral tweet. They made that stripper movie. What was it called? Zola or something like that. Do you remember that?
Mm.
Oh, it was actually pretty good. Like the movie was pretty good. Um, but like they don't have like outside of Twitter, we don't have a text based or a narrative organic storytelling thing that Hollywood can just steal and turn into big shows, right? Or
Yeah.
then not steal, but like license and turn into big shows. And so we don't have the same idea generation that Korea has. And that's because what we generate is like political commentary videos that get clipped on fucking.
All we have is just like these unhinged white supremacists ranting on
Yeah.
fucking
Yeah.
streaming. Over in
Yeah.
Korea, they're doing beautiful little drawings of
Yeah. Little
comic books
tweets
and
being like,
shit.
kill yourself and then like racial slur, like
Yeah.
that's
It's
our
all America's contributing.
that
God.
that's our organic text, like focus group, whatever, right?
Right, 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 right. I
That's
bet they're trying, dude. Somebody's like looking at Nick Fuentes and it's like, can we do a biopic? Like, what are our options here?
I would watch it,
Oh God.
I would probably watch the Nick Fuentes well, actually, I probably wouldn't.
Yeah.
It
I don't
depends
know.
who made it,
There's
actually.
no way he's that interesting, like to sustain a biography.
Oh
I don't
man,
know.
I
Just
don't
some
know.
like Weasley little bigot. I don't know. Yeah.
He is a weaselly little bigot, but I do think he's like probably interesting enough to carry an hour and a
Yeah.
half long bio.
Biopic. This is going to be our fault. They're going to make the Nick Fuentes biopic. This is how our careers end, Jay. They're going to make a Nick Fuentes biopic, and then the director is going to be interviewed about it. And he's going to be like, I was just listening to this. I saw a clip of this podcast on Substack where they said,
Yeah.
yeah, and then, yeah, that's how it ends.
Oh, that was for a while our small generation machine was podcasts, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Movies. Yeah, yeah.
Right. And so like podcasts would get turned into movies and part of the hustle, like I remember this because I would occasionally have like an agent or a producer ask me, can you write like a podcast? And then we can turn the podcast into a movie, you know? And I was like, well, why don't we just make the movie? Why do I
Yeah.
have to make a podcast? And they're like, well, it needs to have like some sort of IP that we can buy, et cetera, et cetera. And I
Mhm.
was like, I'm not gonna make a podcast so that you can make a movie out of it,
Yeah.
Like
That's bizarre.
it's just weird. And so now I guess people are like there's like a push to start using short stories, like people like license short stories or something like that. I guess that's a new thing because I don't know, it's like some sort of IP that they can show, but like how do you get an organic sort of audience testing of a short story?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
haven't read shorts. I'm like a fiction writer, or I was. I haven't read a short story since the Obama administration. I didn't even read that cat person thing, that everybody talked about.
You haven't read a single short story since Hope and Change.
Yeah. Oh, Henry, The Gift of the Magi. That was the last one I read.
Dude, those
So,
words.
yeah, like I read them in workshop when other my friends would write them, but outside
Sure,
of that,
sure.
man, I didn't really do that. So I don't know. That those are all the things I think, in my opinion, at least, that are contributing to the decline in box office numbers.
I mean, do you agree? What do you think though? Because like the more we talk about it, I do just think like the inslopification of everything is like across these cultural industries is like part of the problem. Like, I mean, you see this in fiction, you see it in film, right? Like, and if you look at like the kind of essays that go viral, often they're like long form essays that are really well written. Like a lot of times, I mean, things don't go viral on Twitter the way they used to, obviously because of like link suppression and stuff. But like when you look at like the gooning essay in Harper's that we talked about, right? Like that went super viral. It's like long as shit and really well written. And it just does seem like when anyone puts something out that's actually high quality and that like is long and like there's effort in it, like people will engage with it, And like, I mean, obviously, like when these like actually decent movies like Sinners or Weapons or whatever have come out, like people get really stoked about them. And so I don't know, it just feels like there's part of the problem is just like slop, right? And I mean the Marvel movie piece of it, I mean that's all just slop. I mean some of them I'm sure were decent, but I don't know, it just feels like a quality problem, like that these studios and a lot of publishers have just like made a bet on just like cheap sloppy, garbage, and people just are not going to read that and they're not going to watch it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't. I think I wish that was true, but
Am I being too utopian?
I don't think it's true. I think it's. I mean, the Marvel movies did great, and many of them. I didn't watch them, but they're all the top grossing movies ever.
Which is
And,
crazy.
and book sales are driven by like terrible books about women being murdered, right? Like, I mean, that's it basically.
It's all just like that, or like the like somebody from the royal family's terrible autobiography.
Yeah, on the nonfiction end, yeah, but like on the fiction end, where they actually sell more books, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like Where the Crawdad. I don't even know what that book's about, or it's like Mitch Albom doing his latest like nostalgia like jerk off book, right? And those are the books that sell, and those are bad books, and they've always been bad books, but they've always sold a ton of copies. And so I don't know if it's a quality thing, to be honest. I just think it's like the distribution channels, like I said, are gone. And so how do you sell when you don't have a distribution channel? Because
Mm-hmm.
everybody's watching YouTube and
Yeah.
they're watching like clips of Candace Owens yelling about Nick Fuentes or something like that, Like that's where.
Do they not like each other? I have no clue. I'm not attuned to them at all.
No, they famously have beef, but now they're united in some ways.
Mm.
Yeah, I probably know a little too much about this, honestly, but I don't know. I find all that very fascinating. Sort of
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll talk about
It
Florida at
is.
some point.
Yeah, it is interesting that the sort of like, I mean, John Gans in his book talks about sort of like the way in which like a lot of the sort of like far right stuff has its origins in the sort of like paleocon moment in the 80s and 90s, right? But it is interesting that like I think like the paleocons would have found it like revolting that like two minorities ended up being like their like intellectual legacy, like Candace
Right.
Owens and Fuentes.
Yeah.
Like someone
claims he's white. I don't know that.
Someone takes a time machine and tells like Pat Buchanan, like Pat, you're gonna be, your ideas 30 years from now are gonna be really influential. It's like fucking sick. And then like it's this like black woman who rails about the plantation all the time, and he's just
No, she's not even doing that.
He's looking up from hell and is sad.
Talking about the occult and aliens.
Oh, is she? Nice. Oh yeah, how she was like, didn't she accuse like Peter Thiel of being like a hybrid alien or something like that? She's like, their skin's too tight. Like it's
she's the part of that take is correct, but I do think he is a human being. His skin is too tight. That part is correct.
That's the part that's right.
That part is right. All right. Well, I think we've been here a while, and thank you everyone for tuning in. We are gonna just keep doing this, I think, because like we said, I think it's a way to do the podcast that's keeps it a little bit fresher than what it was before, and I don't know. It seemed like last week a lot of you watched the video after it was posted, which was cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we have a couple thousand people actually watch the video after it was done. And the live numbers, I think, depends on the timing or whatever. But I think it's worth keep doing, and we're going to bring on more guests, and we're going to try, and maybe we'll even do something where we have like several guests pop in and we just talk about it. But it'll feel a little bit different. The audio issues that we have will be fixed next week. The problem that we have right now is that Substack only allows you to go live through your phone. And so you're hearing our phone audio right now, which is unfortunate. But there is a way to do it through your desktop, but it just involves a lot of tinkering that somebody at Substack was kind enough to say that they'll walk us through this week. And so next week, we'll go back to having like our expensive microphones and stuff like that. And so we'll sound a little bit better than we do this week. But thank you for bearing with us. And as always, if you would like to contribute to the show, you can do it on Patreon or Substack. All right, Tyler. We'll talk.
Peace out, man.
Okay. Bye.